All right, it's time to try our luck with the Week 7 best bets. Coming off a bad week, lost 2 games and pushed 1 last week, so we need to get back on track. Hopefully we will in this Week 7. 5 games I like this week, so plenty of opportunity here. Let's start in Chicago, shall we, where the Miami Dolphins come to town. Chicago, a 3-point favorite on BETDAQ. I like the visiting Dolphins in this spot. I do think Chicago a little bit overrated and overvalued right now. And the Dolphins, I think the opposite might be true. I think they might be a little bit underrated and undervalued. The Dolphins have really been running the ball well this season. Top 5 in rush yards per game. And Chicago, you remember, finished last in rushing defense last season. Now, when you look at the numbers this year, they seem to be better, right around the middle of the pack. But you examine their schedule, and they have faced 3 teams, 3 run-first teams. And in those 3 games, they have not been good. They've allowed over 430 yards rushing in those 3 games. So I just don't think the Bears are quite as good as they appear to be right now. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Dolphins went up and beat them outright. I think Miami +3, a good-looking bet this week. Next one I'd like to talk about, the Atlanta Falcons visiting Baltimore to face the Ravens. Baltimore, a 7-point favorite on BETDAQ. Look, the Falcons have lost me some money this year, no doubt about it, including last week when I had them as a 3-point home favorite and they ended up losing. But I'm going with them again this week. I think this is too many points here in Baltimore. A little bit of a buy low, sell high opportunity. Certainly a buy low opportunity with Atlanta. I think people are finally checking out on the Falcons, really realizing that this is a bad team. And indeed, I think Atlanta is a bad team. They have a bad defense, a bad offensive line. What they do have is a really good quarterback, a great receiving core. This Falcons team can score some points. 3rd in the NFL in both total offense and points scored. And they're facing a Baltimore defense that has real problems in the secondary. Baltimore 27th against the pass. So even though the defense has been playing well overall, their weakness just happens to be Atlanta's strength. So I think this is a really good matchup for the Atlanta offense. And getting 7 points, this is one of those type of games where Baltimore could have a big lead and could have this thing sewed up, and Atlanta could come back with a backdoor cover because you know they're going to keep throwing the ball. And as we said, Baltimore has trouble defending the pass. So I think the Falcons a good-looking bet as a 7-point underdog. Next one I like to talk about, the Buffalo Bills hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Buffalo a 5-point favorite on BETDAQ. Heard a lot of people looking at the Vikings side this week. After all, this is the Bills we're talking about. And the Bills look like the Bills last week when they lost a big home game to New England. They really had a chance to turn things around in the AFC East for the first time in a long time if they'd have won that game, but they were not even competitive. However, I'm not yet selling the Buffalo Bills. I think this is a good team. I think Doug Marrone made a really good move when he benched struggling second-year quarterback E.J. Manuel 2 weeks ago in favor of the veteran Kyle Orton. I know the Bills are just 1-1 now since Orton's been starting, but he's done his job. He's averaging over 300 pass yards per game, so the Bills getting production from a position where they weren't getting any production before. E.J. Manuel has never had a 2-game stretch in his brief career where he's averaged over 300 pass yards per game for those 2 games. So a definite uptick on offense with Orton under center now. We know Buffalo can run the ball. That tandem, Fred Jackson, C.J. Spiller. And the Vikings, a little soft on defense. They've struggled against the run this season. I do believe Buffalo is going to be able to run the ball in this game. The Minnesota offense is just dreadful. 30th in points scored, led by a rookie quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. And Buffalo, excellent on defense this season, top 10 in both yards allowed and points allowed. I think Buffalo is going to win and win handily today. I like them to cover 5 against Minnesota. 4th game I'd like to talk about, what about the New Orleans Saints visiting Detroit to face the Lions? Detroit is a 2-point favorite on BETDAQ. Listen, the Saints have been awful this season. Well, awful. They're 2-3. They've been awful to bet on. 1-4 against the spread. However, I think rumors of their demise might be a little bit exaggerated. You look at this New Orleans offense, they're still humming along just like they have in years past. 2nd in the league in total offense, meaning yards per game. They're also 2nd in pass yards per game. Drew Brees still getting it done. And even though Detroit leads the NFL in both total defense and scoring defense this year, statistically right now they have the best defense in the league, we know the Lions much better up front than they are in the secondary. Issues at the cornerback position there. I think Brees is going to have a lot of success in this game, whether or not Jimmy Graham plays. He is listed as questionable with a shoulder injury. On the other side of the ball, New Orleans has really been bad on defense this year, but you know what? Detroit has really been bad on offense. The Lions 27th in points scored. They're averaging fewer than 20 points per game. And their best player, Calvin Johnson, might not play in this game. If he does play, should be severely limited with that ankle injury. Don't like this Detroit Lions offense when Calvin Johnson is limping around on a gimpy ankle. New Orleans coming off a bye here. They've won 4 straight coming off of byes. They've won those games by almost 20 points per game, over 19 points per game, their average margin of victory there. This a veteran, experienced team in a back-against-the-wall type situation. I think they come out here and beat Detroit outright. I like the New Orleans Saints as a 2-point underdog. Final game I'm on in this Week 7. New York Giants head to Dallas to face the Cowboys. Dallas a 7-point favorite on BETDAQ. Everybody loving the Cowboys right now after they went into Seattle and beat the Seahawks last week. The Giants, meanwhile, lost 27-0 to the Philadelphia Eagles. So, we have an inflated line here, 7-point number, entirely too many for a game involving these two division rivals. You have to go back to 2010 to find the last time that Dallas beat the Giants by more than 7. These teams have played 7 times since then. Eli Manning always has great success against this Dallas defense. And the Dallas defense, even though they've been better than people thought they were going to be this year, not dominant by any means. They can be had. They've shown that this season. And keep in mind, even though the Giants looked terrible last week, like I said, 27-0, an embarrassment against the Philadelphia Eagles, zoom out a little bit. Just get off the week-to-week emotional roller coaster. See this Giants team for what they really are. Before last week's game, they had won 3 straight games by double digits. They had scored 105 combined points in those 3 games. So, listen, just slow down before you start throwing the Giants under the bus or throwing the baby out with the bathwater or what have you, whatever little stupid saying you want to use. I just don't think the Giants are quite as bad as we saw last week. Don't think the Cowboys are quite as good as we saw last week when they went into Seattle and beat the Seahawks. Think this is a consummate buy low, sell high opportunity. I'm buying low on the New York Giants. Think they're going to keep this one close, like the Giants +7. There you have it. Those are my 5 games this week. I like Miami +3 in Chicago, Atlanta +7 in Baltimore. I like Buffalo -5 against the Minnesota Vikings, New Orleans +2 against Detroit, and the New York Giants +7 against the Dallas Cowboys. I wish you best of luck in whatever you decide to do this week, just so long as your interests don't conflict with my interests. Good luck, folks.